I had the crazy idea today of trying out Starfield, seeing how it's done since last I played it. It's gotten a ton of updates. The most recent one is the Rev 8, the rover, basically the Mako from Mass Effect, just a teensy bit late by 16 years. I couldn't have imagined the disaster I was walking into because, oh boy, this was a journey. For the few time I spent in the game, man, did a number of things happen and a number of ideas solidify in my head. Memories came racing back, but I did want to feel it out a bit. I thought I might as well prepare a save file, one of them, for the expansion that's coming up on the 30th of September, which is going to deal with the Varun, which is the faction or the quest line that I thought was going to be the coolest, the one in the base game that I was the most interested in, just to discover that it didn't exist. So hey, at least there's a very basic, compelling reason to jump into the expansion if you're in the same boat as me, where you already paid for it. And so I booted up Starfield. So the first things that happened, because there was no other possible way this could go down, was that it would load in, it would introduce me to the Creation Club, of course, and then when I booted up the game, it would crash. And I just kept reloading, and it booted up, but it did not run. It ran absolutely terribly. We're talking like 4 FPS. You can see in the footage. Now, to be fair, there are some mods installed on my Starfield. They are updated, by the way, including, Star UI and no delay menus, things like that. And I did try, I turned off the mods, I turned them back on, and on one of the boot ups, it was running decently. And because it went up to like 40 frames per second, the next logical thing I thought was that DLSS wasn't on, and the game is technically running at like 4K, so I booted up the menu and I turned on DLSS and frame generation, and it ran wonderfully. What happened? Was it at some point during turning on and off mods? Who knows, but the initial experience coming back to Starfield was the game does not work at all. Now, getting the new car is fairly simple. You just have to go to any ship technician, which are the guys who can modify ship stuff in any of the major cities, and you pay 25,000 credits, I believe, and you get the car. And the car is just with you forever. They add it to whatever ship you have, and anytime you land, doesn't matter where, doesn't matter if it's in a city, the car will spawn next to you and you can drive the car around. That was way more difficult for me than I expected. You see, I haven't played Starfield since basically launch, since I did my big critique video and I kind of made my peace with the game and then said no more, and I haven't really touched it since then. And it really does turn out they've added a lot of things to Starfield. For starters, the game is no longer limited to 21:9, so you no longer see the UI here because I got to play the game in an actual 32:9 in super ultra wide, which, hey, would have been nice at launch. They also added a quest line called the Trackers Alliance. This is where my nightmare began. So the Trackers Alliance is this questline that once it's activated, I believe at a certain point within the main story after the patch it was introduced in, there's a tracker that just is tracking you down, makes sense. And whenever you land, I guess at any major city or like any normal planet that isn't like a barren wasteland or something, they're there. Maybe it's at every planet, I didn't check. However, for me, for reasons that I didn't understand at that moment in time, everywhere I went, this person would shout at me that they wanted to speak to me, that they needed to talk, and then shoot me while running away from me, initiating combat and making absolutely everybody enter combat as well. So I couldn't talk to any ship technician or anything like that. I was convinced that the game had just been broken because there were other glitches happening. Whenever I went to a location, the game would tell me that I had discovered that location. It would tell me I had discovered New Atlantis when I'm at an endgame save file, right? Like I'm ready to start New Game Plus whenever I want on this specific save. So I thought the game was just broken and this was gonna be like some impossible task, but I was committed. I wanted to get the car. So testing stuff out, in the end, it only mattered if the tracker was there. So if I could reach a location and then enter somewhere and then exit to reset things and never enter line of sight of the tracker, I could make it work. And that's what I did. So I had to enter somewhere, exit, and then stealth my way up to a ship technician without the tracker like locking on to me to be able to buy the car. And then the tracker would pursue me again, but it was fine because I could evade them in my car now. Why I'm basically falling into story time here. It's because this is emblematic of all of the problems of Starfield. It's this spaghetti mess of systems that are all together and poorly organized and poorly put in front of the player for them to understand what's even happening, and you have to constantly question yourself if the game is just broken or was it something I did? Am I dumb? Is there some minute detail that I should be remembering, some system here that's interacting with another system in a weird way that's causing this, or is the game just broken? So anyways, I decided to explore a little bit, test out the car, see how it drives. Long story short with the car, it handles pretty much exactly as you might imagine. It handles a bit like a poor man's Warthog from Halo, in the sense that, and I assume it's the same on controller, right? You just hold the W on keyboard, and wherever you aim the mouse, that's where it turns, right? Where you aim the camera. It doesn't feel terrible, and it can fly, and it can boost on the ground and in the air. It is amphibious, barely. It kind of works on water. And I do think that it's a meaningful addition to the game. So as I started driving it around Jemison, the first thing I noticed is you could scan in it. The second thing I noticed is that I never scanned Jemison. So that's comfy. And that it makes the fundamental loop of exploration so much better. And that's because the previous loop was barely a thing that existed. Like holding W and jumping and boosting to prevent yourself from entering a catatonic state is not gameplay. But with the car, in exchange for getting faster to locations, you do have to like navigate and pay attention to where you're going and the terrain. And, you know, if you jump over hills or stuff, or you jump over certain trees or rocks, you get to go faster and you can boost, and it's cooler. There's more things, which wasn't difficult to do. Again, you're doing more things than nothing. When you combine that with the fact that there's actual maps, in case you had not come back to the game at all, like was my case, there's actual maps of the planets, like surface maps now. When you combine those two things together, it's a much better experience if you did want to go and scan every planet in the game and do some exploration, or even the missions where you have to go and find the temples and things and you have to explore around to see where it is. Those should be much more enjoyable now. For people who are jumping into Starfield today, that's much better. They get the great advantages of some of the patches, some of the quality of life things. They get the car, they get the creation club in case they wanted to pay for mods. Don't you want an all-black skin for your weapons? It's only like $5. And it would be great if we could stop this conversation right there and be like, car is good. Good job, Bethesda. You put in the car. You put something into the game that should have, realistically speaking, been there from day one. Because this is an objective improvement in every measurable measure of this game experience. But we shouldn't do that because the car doesn't solve the problems of the game. It just makes the problem that was there a little bit less obvious for a while. Or if you have Stockholm Syndrome or some weird relationship with this game like I do, you will appreciate it and thank it for existing. But the problem with the incredibly empty planets in Starfield was never that the method of exploring the boring nothingness was boring as well. It's better that the exploration of boring and meaningless content now is done in a way that's a little bit better, but there is still absolutely no reason to ever go exploring. It's a fun diversion, but it doesn't fix the problems that this game is flawed in its very design. From the moment they said, let's try to do a Bethesda-style RPG in space, and how things had to work for that to happen, that was flawed from the start. And the car doesn't fix it, but I also can't help but kind of enjoy in a very twisted way what Starfield is. So trust me, this is going to be worth it. As I was exploring Jemison, I remembered that at least at this point in time for this save file, I needed to attend a funeral over at the lodge. And I was like, oh damn, so like I need to attend it today or it's gonna skip over. So and let's go do that because I wanted to prepare the save for the DLC, right? Oh boy. So I go there and, you know, being me, the first thing I do is jump up on the table and try and shoot everybody, which I can't do with the person speaking, but I found out I could do it to everybody else. And as I'm doing that and everybody is on the ground writhing in pain, Andrea, my wifey, the correct wife, by the way, comes to me with this dialogue pop up. And let me play you my reaction in that moment. I know.
Only in contrast to
Both of us are in shock.
So pure that it can be understood as primordial evil.
Context doesn't exist. I love this. This game is great. But no, after that, which again, very emblematic of the Starfield experience, like just all in a tiny little bubble here. After that, I needed to get to the bottom of the tracker situation, because how would I prepare the save? How would I prepare the game for the DLC if I can't go anywhere? Am I gonna have to be stealthing around the dude who's waiting for me the moment I leave my ship everywhere? I don't think that's gonna work out well. So I decided that the next thing I want to do is navigate the absolutely horrible star map UI thing and Google in what system was Paradiso so that I can park the car on a beach and take a funny screenshot. But of course, the moment I arrive in Porrima, absolutely everybody is shooting me. I try to use the car to avoid the tracker, and everybody that's in Porrima now has started an all-out war against me, and I'm permanently in combat, and I can't do anything. So at the end, I think, what if it's because I have a bounty? But again, Bethesda games and their systems. It's possible that it's because I have a bounty existing somewhere, but maybe my bounty isn't that high to like impede me from existing in places, but it is enough to set off the tracker to be hostile. But how can I clear my bounty if everywhere I go this tracker is there? So I think like, oh, if I go to Sidonia, the tracker is going to be outside, but the city is past the loading screen. And that did work. So I went there and I did have a bounty. So I cleared all of my bounties. And that worked. I could talk to the tracker and start a quest line that I will probably never do. And now I could finally go to Porrima, take my pictures, navigate the car in the water, get into a fight with some Starborn, lose track of my car, and discover that if you go to the surface map, the car is a waypoint on the surface map, and you can fast travel to the car, and you appear directly in the car. Could have been so much work. There could have been a loading screen to get into the car. Think about that. I don't know what was happening with the tracker. I guess the bounty was interacting in a weird way, because again, if the tracker wasn't involved, if I loaded and deloaded out of their site, everything worked normally despite bounties. So Bethesda's bug, I guess, right? Like, who knows? Who knows? I went around, I explored a couple more planets, I shot some people in different like outpost locations, and then I remembered that like, Starfield, you could have been so great. You really could have. And it has good moments. I think the game looks really good still. To keep in mind that the footage you're watching does have a LUTs applied to it in the way I like the game to look. But the game can look great. There's some decent ideas in here. There's some quest lines that have some merit. And once again, I am genuinely excited to see where the expansion goes. And I want to hopefully review it, and I want to have good things to say. I know that there's so much entertainment value in haha, bad game is bad, or buggy game is buggy, or something like that. And like jumping on a pile and hating on things, but that's never my goal. I just end up there when it's true. So what's the overall result of this? Well, Bethesda, you could have done much worse than this. You are at least improving the game. Slowly, in different ways, optimizations, the 32x9 support, you put DLSS in, you put the surface maps in, you put the car in, you of course had to implement Creation Club, you put different quest lines in, quality of life features. Hopefully, the expansion marks a jump in quality for everything, and when we get down to the best parts of Starfield, which is just doing like mission after mission, like the more scripted things, ironically enough, for an RPG. But once you get down to doing the scripted things and just talking to NPCs in quest lines, things like that, you show us something that's worth our time. We know that the game isn't revolutionary anymore. We know that it isn't the second coming of Skyrim, but I think that it can still be decent, and at the very least, I'll probably get a laugh or 7 out of it. So this was a weird video, but I needed to talk about it. and I hope it's a fun story. I hope it's a fun, like, mental exercise about Starfield and remembering that game as it's coming out with new content, and I hope you had a good time. I've been Mugthief. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, consider subscribing for the tons of different things that I do on the channel. Check it out, see if you want to subscribe, maybe watch another video, whatever YouTube recommends you will probably be good. A very extra special thanks to my patrons. Enjoy games. It doesn't matter if they're buggy or they're broken. Find something to laugh about or to enjoy about it. I think that's where I've come to within all of my frustrations and all of my problems with Starfield. I think that's the end point that I've reached in my relationship with the game now. And I'll see you again very soon.